You all set?
Yep.
We'll call this meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance first.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is that, we'll move down so you guys can see the screen. Can you come over here?
All right, the purpose of this meeting tonight is to go over EMS with the town of Friendship.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so just for the benefit of some of our budget committee members and for the select board of Waldoboro and the select board of Friendship, I just thought if we put it all up there together, that it might be more easily understood and might be a more orderly way to have a meeting, so that you can really see in live time on screen what's happening. And it was just our way of trying to figure out the best way to articulate, I would say, our position. That way you guys can ask questions. It's pretty much all up front. Last time we were kind of cross-talking and having all different conversations. So I think this will be easier. And if anybody has trouble seeing, just let me know. So this all started because last summer, and it was happening before the summer, one of the biggest reasons we had to change how we do things was shifts weren't being filled. We had burnout of existing employees, the cost of providing service increased, and we had a significant increase in overtime hours. And it's interesting because overtime hours, at least two of our employees, and two of them are sitting here, Richard worked over 4,000 hours last year, and typical work week is 2080. A typical work year is 2,080. And Derek would have exceeded even Richard's total had he been here for a full year. So, you know, we had staff filling positions because nobody was there to fill them. So we had our full-time management staff filling positions, many more than they should have. So that's where we were. That's why we sent a notice to you guys, because to the Friendship and to all the towns that we service, because Richard and Derek wanted to come and have a chat with us in August about where they were. And it was to the point where, and I think Richard has shared this with many people, that he literally had nightmares about not being able to get somebody in an ambulance. He literally shared recently that he had a dream about Kevin Benner.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It was
I go with that.
that there was a patient and there was no ambulance, and Richard had to put him in the back of his SUV.
Impossible.
And that was a real fear last year. Fast forward now to where we are. Our shifts are filled. We have more employees filling more shifts with less burnout. A decreasing overtime hours, but not a decreasing overtime budget because of the pay increases, and also increased income from charges for service, paramedic intercepts, mutual aid imbalance, and also the Jefferson transports. Whoops, I think I went back the wrong way. Hold on, I gotta go back over the thing, because I'm missing one of the really good pieces here. Slide 3, I forgot slide 2. Oh no. Okay, so I was right, okay. There we go. So the pay increases, they started, as you can see, this was our old, that was our old rate of pay, and that was prior to November 1st of 2021. And along with that, Richard, what was the call-out pay for? The
$7.
$7 at night, essentially. And that was up from
$4.
And that change was made when we had our budget meeting in early 2021. This change came after the meeting that we had in July. And this is what the change is now. And that's the overall change in the job titles. And, you know, nobody likes to make those kinds of jumps, but it was definitely driven by the market. So, we did lose 2 or 3 people to the COVID vaccination, but a lot of it was honestly pay. And I will just go back here and sit down and show you the next slide. And how we know that is okay, I guess I'm not gonna be able to
You
do
want me to move, you wanna go forward?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit there, I'm sorry.
I can move it if you tell me.
No, I'm good. I'm not gonna make you get up anymore.
Well, I could sit somewhere else out of the way.
I'm gonna sit right here. So this represents shifts not filled. So from 2016 to 2021, the blue is January, the green is February, the yellow is November, and the purple is December. And that shows what we were facing. And our highest last year, where we weren't filled, was the summer. And at points we had over 80 shifts in a month that weren't filled. And this represents 2022. So in January we had 12 shifts that weren't filled, and in February only 10 shifts that weren't filled. So obviously the changes we made have had an effect on who's staffing. And I want to explain about transfers. So you've heard a lot about transfers. So calls that go into dispatch, calls for service, those are 911 calls. The transfers are the transfers that are between facilities. So that generates revenue. And one of the bellwethers of whether we're doing better or worse is transfers. So December 2021, we had 34 transfers, and that was up from the prior 6-month average of 24. So we went up 10 transfers once we made the changeover. And so transfers are from between facilities, so Lincoln Health, Maine Health. Transports are a little different, and that's the provision of a transport service for BLS, ALS, but are in support of another service. So that's basically Jefferson has their own first responder, so we transport for that service. And I just want to say, in the past we kept really good records of the transfers that we've rejected. And if you'll note, in 2020, that was the COVID year, our transfers went down. Even last year, short-staffed, we ran 334 transfers, which is the most in that, in the last few years. But there's no data of the rejected ones, and that's because during COVID and also with staff shortages, a lot of times they were just overworked and they just didn't keep track of that data. And we started to keep track of that data now. And our timeline shows March 2021, our budget was formulated. It was adopted with an increase to attract more per diem. And the changes to standby pay was a $3 increase. And I remember Derek, Richard was out at the time, and Derek stood up here. Richard was on Zoom, and they said, well, this is one way, if we go from 4 to 7, that we could potentially attract more people. So that was our one effort of trying to attract more people, and that didn't exactly work. So in August, we had an EMS meeting with our chief and our deputy and the select board, and they talked about staffing concerns, COVID vaccination, potential gaps in coverage, and the towns receiving service from us were invited to attend. And in the end, what we came up with is, we need to recruit we need to retain, and we need an increase in pay now. And that was very clearly heard by the select board. And honestly, very passionately spoken about by our deputy and our EMS chief. And I'm gonna take the hit for this one. You know, when I looked and I did the analysis the other day of the hours they worked, I actually texted, I walked into Richard's office and I told him I needed to apologize to him, because you know what's happening at the time, you know, you're like, oh, you know, you're here a lot or you're working a lot, and you don't realize until you see those hours at the end of the year in big bold black letter, or black numbers, that holy moly, it was a tough year. It was a really, really tough year. So September 21st, in consultation with the budget committee, a decision is made to increase pay and put the pension question to the public, and notice was sent to towns receiving the service. So part of our way to retain people and recruit more people was to make a change in our pension system. And we went to a special plan for EMS, similar, well, it's exactly the same as our police, it's 3C, and it will allow our employees to retire at 25 years of service regardless of age at 2/3 of their salary. So that was a huge enticement. And one of the things that part-time employees now can be pension eligible. But they have certain things they have to meet. So technically we have our full-time EMS providers that are paramedics or AEMTs or EMTs. And then we have part-time. And what they have to do to qualify to be part-time is give us a regularly scheduled shift on a weekly basis. So if I know that Tom Sawyer is going to work you know, a 12-hour shift every Wednesday, that's his regularly scheduled day, he's qualified for pension. And then we have per diem, and what per diem comes with is anytime they can come and serve us and serve the community. So November 21st, the first of the pay increases hit, and we have the public hearing on the pension changes. And then December 21st, the first meeting with towns receiving service, and we also had a special town vote. And it was actually, I think, I was told it was the first time there was ever a unanimous town vote in the town of Waldoboro. And that was to go to the 3C pension. Okay. So budgeting for EMS. There's 3 pieces to the budget. Expenditures and revenue, that's really easy for everybody. Everybody loves expenditures and revenues. Everybody understands them. The third piece is liabilities, and that is so often overlooked and misunderstood by our budget committee, by our own select board. It's a really hard thing to look at. And you cannot look at the expenditures and the revenue and have an accurate accounting without the liability. And I can't say this enough, and I've corrected our own people saying this. There's not a profit at the end. So everybody's under the misconception that somehow there's a profit at the end. We just mitigate expenses. We've never turned a profit, at least in the years I've been here. Maybe when we were volunteers, we turned a profit, but there is no profit from EMS. If you want to lose money, have an EMS department or a swimming pool. Those are 2 guaranteed ways, because it's a service, and we can't forget that part. It's a public service. So again, there's not a profit. We don't make money. It's mitigating expenses. So expenditures. Our operating expenditures, these are the day-to-day operational expenditures. That's wages, benefits, together with the supplies, fuel, maintenance costs. And honestly, you know, they're pretty easy to predict. Our capital expenditures, these are large expenditures that have a minimum of a 5 years worth of life. Stretchers, cardiac monitors, maybe Lucas devices in the future. And in 2019, we have a very active budget committee, and In 2019, the Budget Committee, along with the Select Board, decided that due to the cost of an ambulance, funds for ambulances would be borrowed and paid for over a period of their useful life, and that's typically 7 years. At least that's been the experience here. And this cost will appear in an operating budget under debt service. So it's not gonna be a capital expenditure, the expenditure would show up in debt service. And the way it would work out would be approximately $36,714 in debt service would then, and that's based on an ambulance at $257,000, I think, which sounds like a lot of money. But if you've bought either a fire truck lately, you'll know it's going up, everything's going up. And then we have revenues. And what makes up our revenue? So calls for service, 911, 911 service, and we get insurance. But there is a difference there. Everybody thinks, oh, well, you get insurance. So if you were to know what the Medicare rates are, so say the average Medicare for a transport to somebody to the hospital, we only get paid about $383 for that, although the charge may be $860. So that's what we get paid. So charges versus insurance equals an amount due. And that's where the problem comes in. And we also have calls for service that are self-pay. Transfers, that's between facilities again, Lincoln Health to Maine Med. And we can charge for them, and 90, I think it was 98.5% of the time, we do make money on those. And what I mean is, we can bill for the full amount, so we're made whole most of the time with transfers. Paramedic intercepts, and that is just simply providing a paramedic to provide advanced life support level care. A lot of times we are sending a paramedic intercept to Warren, and we do charge for that because we now have a fly car that we're using for that specific purpose. So we're not taking an ambulance, we're simply sending a fly car. And then transport, and that's providing transport of patients to a hospital handed from another organization. So what changed in the revenue? Because we just didn't change expenditures, we had to change how we looked at revenue. And the changes addressed mutual aid that has become, and I call it mutual aid, but it's regular aid, where with CLC next to us, we have a mutual aid relationship. I will tell you that for some other towns around us, we have more of, we provide them mutual aid, they are not providing, so we're getting a little skewed there. So we've had to address that and start charging for mutual aid calls, which unfortunately, it just has to happen, because just like we experienced last summer, agencies around us are experiencing the same thing we are, and it's a lack of staffing. And COVID, one of the big things we noticed during COVID was nobody was calling for an ambulance. You know, they all didn't want to go to the hospital, and I can't say that I blamed them in the beginning. But it became very apparent that we had no revenue stream coming in at that time. And that became scary because there was no revenue, but we still had to be here because, as everybody remembers, we kept hearing there was going to be this huge onslaught of people going to the hospital, and it became a problem. So that lost revenue, although we did get some relief from the federal government, did not make up for the loss in revenue. So liabilities, what is a write-off? This is a debt that is determined to be uncollectible after collection attempts. And $525,800 is the amount that was essentially written off at the end of 2019. So that's still out there, that just looms large. And then there's outstanding, and that is the debt that is determined to be aged and may be written off after collection attempts from 2019 to 2021, and that's right now, and that number fluctuates. It can go up or down, but it's right now it's at $163,468. And the other liability we have, which we really just started taking a hard look at, is calls with no transport or patient, therefore no billing or revenue. And coming up with that number of what we should charge for those types of situations. So I took what the formula should have been for friendship, and I did like back to 2019 because I figured that's where we had good data to. So I'm gonna try to walk you through this. So our budgeted was in 2019 for revenues was $692,169. The actual that we got was $582.79. So there was a deficit of $110,000 in our revenues. Our liabilities and expenditures, our actual that we spent was $756,971. So that's an actual. So we did good. We had $2,950 left. Actual capital, that's a year we bought the ambulance. So that was an expenditure right out of capital. That was back when we would save money beforehand and then buy the ambulance. The write-off we carry, and then the outstanding. So as you can see, that outstanding at that point in time was $139,121. So there's your total liability. If we go over to this screen, if we were to bill friendship based on the 16% that is in the contract, that would be our actual revenue, that would be our true liability cost, plus our revenue loss, and that would be your cost of service, and that would be what the 16% for friendship was. And, you know, that's accounting for everything. So, again, that just gives you a little picture in time of that. And in 2020, again, we have one of these 31,807. Now, part of that is misleading because that does include, the actual revenue number does include a reimbursement from the federal government for the loss of revenue. So if we didn't have the federal government, that balance would have been bigger. And again, I did just like a friendship bill based on 16%, and that would have been $133,567. 2021, it's a similar thing. You're at $127,914, and that's based on actuals. But you're getting the sense we're still carrying this write-off because we carried that since 2019, and we still have an outstanding. And again, there's that outstanding balance that fluctuates. And then 2022, this is kind of where we're at now. And we have to realize too, I'm talking in our budget time. So we're a fiscal year. We go July 1st to June 30th of the following year. So this year we budgeted $610,876 in revenue. Operating was $938,812. And I will tell you, once we made those changes to the pay increases, to the people's rates of pay, that number is not going to be the actual number. That is a placeholder for right now. And we have the actual capital to date, again, the write-off and the outstanding. And comes over here, the 16% would have been $166,239. We asked for, I think it was $149. Is that how I get to 74? I think so. And we asked for half of it from January 1st of this year till June 30th of 2022. And then it would be $10,130 from 7/1 of last year till 12/31 of last year, which is 2021. And it's been indicated they would only like to pay the $20,260. So why we asked for and what we asked, and based on the changes to how we deliver service, we billed friendship $74,635.50, which represented 6 months of service. And we used a formula based on population, which was 15.9% of our total operating budgeted expenditures. And even if we used the existing formula in the contract, the contract billing would have been more than we requested by $16,968. Let's talk formulas, because there's a million ways to do this, and we're going to have this conversation at some point with formulas. So, and I threw Jefferson in here for
Overall purpose.
all kinds of purposes. So, because we went to their meeting recently, and one of their residents asked a really important question was, why aren't you contracted? Why should we have to go through this every year and be scared? Why don't you contract for three years? And basically I said, we're open to discussing that. But again, so it's an open, this is an open canvas. So there's a couple of ways to do it. So I took call volume, and this is everybody's call volume. And then typically, if you're going to use it in a formula, you average it out for 3 years. So this column right here is the 3-year average of what calls are what. We also did population, and we also did valuation. And I know how much you love that. You hate valuation, but I did it because a lot of towns are going to that. So, and I did it with, this represents all 3 towns, and this represents just Waldoboro and Friendship down here. And I do have printed things for you guys to take home and look at and study. But, so there is some, you know, different ways you can do it. And as if you've been reading the newspaper, you can certainly see that CLC's been having a lot of fun with how they do their formulas. And so I guess as Union, but it's a different way of looking at it. So these are what it works out to be. If you were to do call volume, population, and valuation, Friendship would sit at the lowest. If you did call volume and population, you're a little higher. And that would depend on Jefferson too. Like, you know, what area are we actually covering? Should we, you know, revisit that? And we're open to doing all of those things. And then, again, population, right now you're higher than Jefferson is. And then this represents just Waldoboro and Friendship. So if you look at it, having Jefferson in the mix does, in each of these categories, help you out compared to just it being high. So I did a cost of service, including Jefferson and Waldoboro for you, and this was based on 2022 numbers, not next year's numbers, and different ways. So if you look, you can do, and the blue on the top, call volume, population, and valuation, call volume and population. Call volume obviously would be something I'm sure you'd like at 123,744. And population, strictly a population. And then this strictly represents whether it's just Waldoboro and Friendship. So those would be the numbers that you would be paying. And then I thought, you're going to ask me a great question. You're going to say, well, what if we don't want all your revenue and all your liabilities and we just want our own? So I figured it that way too.
We didn't want that. We never asked that.
So here's the budget number, and then that would be your share. The 16% would be $150,000, and then I'm giving you just the revenue from the receipts from Friendship at $45,000. But then we have to figure out the outstanding portion that was yours, and then the write-off, and that would come to $178,682. So, like I said, there's a lot of ways to look at it. There's a lot of ways to slice it. And I think that's great for a future conversation that we want to have of how do we proceed. And it has to be something that's good for everybody. And I was hoping too that it would also bring in Jefferson into the mix. If they really do want to contract, it does have an effect on what everybody pays. 2023, I'm going to be really honest with you. It's It's a $1.4 million budget. There's no way around it. It's $1.4 million. We've been through it with our budget committee, our illustrious budget committee, and you know, we did it every which way we could to try to figure out how to get that number down. But if we want the service, we have to pay to have it. Again, that write-off and the outstanding is still there, but the revenue went up too. We anticipated the revenue increases from the charges from providing service. Again, that's charging mutual aid. That's the Jefferson contract. Well, it's not really a contract. The Jefferson agreement for what they at least paid this 6 months. And that gives you an idea of where we're at. And then that's Richard riding off into the sunset when he retires.
Hopefully not an ambulance.
I know.
Hopefully not in an ambulance. Hello, I can reduce that down now, so hold on, because I see a bright shining face of Paul Smeltzer there. Look at Paul, there he is. I am flying without my, well, we'll see Paul. He won't see most of us, but we can see Paul. Paul, we can see you, hello. So that's the overview of where we're at, how we got here, and hopefully some options moving forward. And you can have this now. I didn't want people, I always hate when people give out,
Is this what we just saw?
that is
Okay.
gonna be exactly what you just saw.
Thank you.
Well, just because I hate giving them out beforehand, because then everybody gets ahead and nobody pays attention to the speaker. And I had a special request, but you guys pretty much know this. Special request from, okay. That's for you. There's one for Jan.
They don't have any.
Got it.
What? I don't, I can make more, and I will email it to all of my budget committee and select board. I'll even email it down to you guys in Friendship in case you wanna put it on your website. So, I thought that if we had a meeting like this, it might be easier for everybody to understand how we got here, why decisions were made. I also should mention that Derek Booker, as of April 1st, will be joining us to take over the retiring Richard's place.
He's
And-
got big shoes to fill. Let me tell you.
It's true.
He does. And
You're not that big, Richard. He's a pretty big boy.
Probably his feet will be sore then.
so there will be continuity. Derek's been here for a very long time. He was our deputy director, and now he's going to be our director, and we're very happy to have him back. And it's, like I said, it's never a good thing to raise expenditures, and explaining it to the different towns has been awkward at best, to say the least. And Bob and I went out for an impromptu meeting in Jefferson. They were having their public hearing on it, which was a whole different group of people from the first meeting we had went to. And they had really good questions. And Nick from CLC was there because their budget is also going up, comparable to ours. And he did a lot of talking because Richard couldn't be with me that night. He was actually on a call. And he handled more the operational aspects of it, and I handled more the financial aspects of the conversation. And it's just happening all over, and I think we see that. And I just wanted you guys to understand too the value of of having another town partner, because it does reduce everybody's piece of the pie a little bit. It's not huge. And we are open, like I said, if Jefferson wants to have the conversation about a contract, I think it's something we should explore. If you would like to send a representative to do that with us, I don't think our select board would have any issue with that at all. And, you know, if we have to explore different formulas, you can look at those formulas there, you can play with them yourselves. I'll send you, if you would like, I can send you the Excel that makes it really easy to plug stuff in. Even if we figure out a way to deal with the outstanding, and the outstanding is gonna be the outstanding, but the write-offs and how that works. Maybe one way to look at it is say, well, you know what, we'll take care of our portion of the write-off over a period of time, and then we'll bill the rest like this, you know? And I think that's like an acceptable way, but like I'm saying, we're open. We
Yeah.
just wanna start, you know, the dialogue. Well, he has to, no,
Go ahead.
First of all, yeah, in a real world, we'd love a $20,000 bill, but we know we're gonna pay more. We're all right with that. When we're presented a bill of substantial differences, we just like to know why it arrived at that. Okay, now, there is ways, I ain't gonna say it negotiated, but I mean, it's like, we gotta work out something to keep this contract going that we should have done years ago. It should have been done a long time ago.
probably 2012 would have been a really good start.
Yeah.
That
It
seems
would
to
have
be
been-
when the
right.
wheel, that seems to be, and that wasn't Richard's fault.
That's across the board.
No,
It's
that's
probably
right, and it doesn't,
everybody,
it doesn't
right.
matter, but we're willing, we're here
Right.
for that purpose, and our year and your year propose us a big problem at times.
It does for us too, because, you
Yep.
know, you're looking at a calendar year,
Yep.
and we're billing a year behind,
And
essentially.
what we do with the transfer station, when we get that, we put in our budget what we think may go up next year, and we're already covered. We didn't have that to do this.
Well, we
this.
weren't even sure, I mean,
No.
and that was part of our issue is, I said this a lot to the budget committee this year. I mean, we asked the budget committee to approve a lot of budgets that were significantly higher than last year. And they asked really great questions, I think. But the one thing that I'm proud of is I have a budget committee that just doesn't meet when the budget's coming in. They met twice in the fall because I requested them
Yep.
to come meet to talk about EMS. You know, they are my, I like to say, they're the workhorses,
Yep.
you know, they'll come whenever I ask them to, and they've been great about supporting everything.
That's when we start our budget process. It's usually the end of November and December. And we had none of this information at that point of figures. We knew something, but we didn't know any figures. In my mind, no, I didn't realize it was gonna be like that.
No, and honestly, nobody really did, I don't think. I mean, we were to the point of, so what's the number that people will come back to work? You know, what's the magic number?
It
And
took us twice to figure that out.
and it took us twice. I mean, it took us 2 tries. One during the middle of the budget and in March of 2021, and then again in September of 2021. And I don't think anybody expected a mass exodus. There is some good stuff happening that I want to point out too, is Lincoln County is offering free courses to for EMTs. We put that out on our website. I know Waldoboro EMS did. It's going to be in the Lincoln County News. So, you know, we hope to get more people. I will tell you, you know, Derek's come in, over the weekend, he kept texting me and asking me questions about budget and stuff, and we were working on it together. You know, Richard's sick of me and just wants to go fishing. But, you know, we've been having we've been trying, and till that budget is adopted, we can still look at it again. But I do think if there's a way for us to come to a meeting of the minds, at least, you know, obviously July 1st going forward, but I think it's important too that we discuss the January 1st to June 30th.
I do that, and I've got some paperwork, and I don't expect, I'll pass it out, we'll discuss it at another meeting, I'm sure. But on that chart where you have all the positions unfilled during that time, how far are you now? Are you got them all covered?
10 to 12.
Okay,
Versus.
Yeah, so if it's the third slide, and it shows you where they are. So.
okay, that one, yeah.
And I didn't show the summer months that were really bad, so what you're seeing in January and February of last year, was 54.50, but then there's a bunch of 80s in 2021, but I also showed November and December, where you really start to see, that's when the pay started in November. So we only had 47 vacancies of shifts in November, and then December it went to 23. And then in January it went to 12, and in February it went to 10. 10 shifts not being filled.
Do you think you gotta have more EMTs and a whole, to create,
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to look at, we've got to change our model, and the model that works is putting full-time people in positions. So we budgeted for, there's some leeway in the budget. We could go more per diems, or we could invest wisely into what we need. And that's something that our new chief is going to do, which is look at, should we be looking for EMTs? Should we be looking for medics? And trying to come up with a schedule that doesn't create overtime. And I'll be honest with you, our overtime hours reduced, but our overtime went up because, you know, before we were paying $7 an hour overnight. It just wasn't working. Now we're paying for a medic, an experienced medic, 28, and under 5 years as a medic, $26 an hour. If we were to hire somebody on a full-time position, that rate of pay drops because obviously then they're getting fully benefited.
And just something to mention, back in the summer of 2021, a lot of those shifts were covered by Richard and myself.
Correct.
And we weren't working for overtime.
Right.
So all of a sudden, though the shifts are being filled, which is great, but now that overtime dollar amount's increasing because the salaried employees aren't covering all the shifts, so.
And that was hard, and like I said, that's why I brought up the number of hours they worked, because, you know, I would see them in and out, and I'm thinking, you know, when I saw the numbers over 4,000, like I said, I walked into Richard's office and I truly offered him a sincere apology. And I texted Derek and said, I apologize to you too, because I said, you know, that was my job to realize what was happening.
so your projection of 1.4 million for the coming year, your projection, is that something we can budget on? Or is that something that
So
come next year?
depending on what your formula is, yes, you
Yeah,
can.
okay.
It's
I
not
just-
gonna be, so it's not gonna be any worse than that. I mean, it's.
It was less than that, but.
It's, I do
No.
too. And that's where we have to start talking seriously about what the formula looks like and what we should do. Because, you know, this is here to stay, and I don't know if you're following the legislation, but it looks like it ought to pass is the one that makes EMS a
Essential service.
essential service that
Yeah.
towns are gonna have to provide. So that's, but on a happy note with that, that also opens up EMS to some federal funding that hasn't been there before. So it could be a really,
Actually, Maine EMS is doing a study right now, and the first report's coming out in July, and I think the second one's coming out in August or September. But they've hired an outside agency to come in, state of Maine has, to look at EMS in the state of Maine and to take a real hard look at it to see what can be done to, but it's not just Maine, to other
Oh,
places,
yeah.
other states that have issues.
I know, I mean, it's not nothing that I don't know, because it's hitting everybody, but it's the.
The sticker shock.
it's the
Yeah.
sticker, believe it.
And it's our timing because we had already been to budget and everything was all written and being
It's
voted
a
on.
very hard process and I think part of the, like you said, we cross years and it's very difficult when you cross years and it just seems everybody around us you know, we cross years.
If
And
we
I
add
think
3% to the transfer station budget is what we do, because you never know.
well,
and
your
that-
transfer
and we-
station is actually in good shape this year. I have to
Yeah, but I'm
say.
just saying, that's how we handle it, because it's years crossed.
Yeah,
You know,
transfer station in good
if,
shape.
if you're talking operationally as well, like Julie mentioned earlier, we preach, we go on these sales pitches about how we're providing a service, right? And how we're providing a good service. Most of our patients, our customers base seem pretty happy with the service we provide.
We wouldn't want to be without it.
What I will say is I think with the budget increases, not only is it gonna provide the same service you had before, it's gonna be better. You know, because you have people that are not burnt out, you have people that are making a decent livable wage and wanna come and do the job versus go home and stay home for 3 weeks because they just worked 90 hours a week for a month, you know? So I think the services, my opinion is, if this all, you know, as it goes forward, things are just gonna be better. But, you know, and like Julie said, if we qualify for some of that stuff, those federal funds, you can get grants that improve equipment, improve work, you know, force conditions, and it just is a whole better service with more money. Unfortunately, budgets are a big part of it, but you're gonna get a better service overall.
And one of the things that really hit home in that August meeting, and I don't remember if it was Derek or Richard who said it, but, you know, at the time, the medic pay was $19.25, and a store in town here was paying $18 an hour. And then it was right around the time, even right before the increases went in, I was driving in Warren to go to Curtis Meats, and they had the UPS. Do you remember the UPS signs? I've never seen them before, UPS.
Like
siren.
political signs,
They were
just
like
stuck on the
political
side of the
signs
road.
for UPS, and
Yep.
and you know, I mean, literally, they could make more money delivering packages than patients. And you know, I wax quite a bit about them because I just think they're superheroes. You know, we just don't see their
Oh, I don't
capes.
think, we have no
Yeah.
complaint
Oh
of
no, I
service,
know,
not at
but it's
all.
just
No,
that
no.
had
even,
to be
even,
done.
I don't think I've ever seen him burnt out when he's arrived. He still looks all right.
I talk in my sleep, but.
Has dreams about Kevin Bell.
And I just want to be
Yeah.
perfectly clear, that happened once, so it's not.
But it's gonna haunt you forever.
But it was such a nice, I mean, but it was an interesting dream because he was having the dream that he couldn't get an ambulance on the road. I was having those same fears. I mean, I will tell you, August, September to me was very bleak. And nothing takes me down much. I mean, everybody will pretty much tell you I'm a ear person, but it was scary thinking that maybe it wasn't gonna happen, so.
Those are just copies after.
There's 10 copies, huh?
What is that?
This is what we have.
Kevin, I think that's what
This letter from Fred?
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 10 copies here, I don't know, but that's just,
They have them.
Is it this?
they don't have that.
Yes.
No, not unless you got it today.
Oh, is this a new one?
He dreams about it every day.
There's actually almost did you give him that proposal one?
Is this one?
No, I don't
Hey,
think,
oh, I got one more
literally
question
just
if I
got
may.
that.
Um,
Is this the one we
When
just
you
found?
did your budget process and put the figures on the table, did you go back and ask for more money after that? And ask your people, did the budget change after that?
Yes.
Okay, that's right.
And that will be on our,
It's not on your website that way, that's why I'm asking.
so it,
Probably have
it,
time.
it will,
Days, it's
because
pretty
what we
fast.
were waiting for,
Okay,
so on our June 9th, it's not the 19th, when is
Yeah.
June? The next warrant, the town meeting,
Yeah.
so we do it, there will be, according to our auditor, we will have a question for this year's budget, because we're still in this year's budget, amending our
okay,
expenditures
so
and our
what's in there
revenue.
may not be correct, because it's based upon your website.
Right, so
So-
our revenue and our expenditures will be amended by the voters on June, whatever our regular town meeting is.
Okay,
And
so that may not be correct.
that's okay.
Because I went
Because
by
we
what was
don't,
on your website.
I was kind of hoping that maybe we're gonna be very lucky and it's not gonna go up. And I actually, Peg and I I told Peg that I looked at it today.
Yeah.
I don't know what that final expenditure number is, I can project it, but I really wanted to
Wait and
get,
see.
I wanted to get January, February, and March with the payroll under our belt before I make any promises. So that budget, we have to amend our budget from this year, and then they have to approve the budget for next year. And we have one more budget committee meeting, hopefully, Thursday night. And then we should be firm on where we're at, and then I can share that with you.
Okay, it's, and
I can share that with you.
I almost thought that based upon, I didn't know it till tonight, but your figures and what you're talking. Some of that's not right.
That's okay. But yeah, we have to do that, but as our auditor explained to us, because, you know, we weren't sure, I'm like, I don't wanna put out a number and then have that be the number for this year. So our current year, that ends June 30th, because we need the voters to approve it, and we figured we would do that at the same time they did everything else. We didn't really have a choice, and that was what both our attorney and our auditor said was, obviously this is an emergent situation, and it was.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it was one of those things where, you know, I called them both up and said, you know, hey, so, got this problem here. So, it's
Good
been
question,
fun.
Bob.
Yeah, okay, I thought
I thought he had his hand
I
up.
thought so too. Sorry.
But we do have good news on their transfer station, so that's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bubba.
Is the 525,000 you guys had to write off, is that can you recoup any of that in that? Is it part of it
So,
in
well,
that?
typically
No.
what you would do is we carry it, but you should pay yourself off that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, maybe that 525, that's what I'm talking about, like maybe, cause I can go through and pick out, I know what your number is, that was the last slide on there, so I know what your number from that 525
Right.
was. So maybe we say, you know, if it's.
Our portion of that
Your portion of
written
that,
off
pay
over
that
5
out
years or
over
whatever.
5 years,
Yes, I get that.
stuff like that.
That's what I was asking, if you
Yeah.
had any of that in your budget, so.
No, we
Okay.
didn't, because
We
this
talked
was not
about
the
it.
year.
Yeah.
We have talked about that.
Well,
This
to me,
was not the year.
that's a lot to write off for anybody.
Yeah.
It's hard because you want to be, you don't want to be that person who's putting people to collection, but at the same token, you have to do something. And we, at least here, have the ability for our Waldoboro residents to go through our Philbrook Fund.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys have in Friendship, but,
The Liz Fund.
the Liz Fund, well, you know.
You better put a couple
Poor
more
Liz.
hours in, Liz.
Liz gets everything.
I'm
But
more
that's-
worried about next year's budget than I am this one. I mean, to
Well,
get- for
I'm
us.
worried about both.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, is this, for us to see this increase one year, and then the next year, you know, a large
But I
amount
think
too,
once
it's like,
we
where's
get,
it gonna end, or is
next
it
year,
gonna
I
be?
think it becomes normal then. I think we just have to realize that that's the cost of service and going forward. And we need to, that's gonna be our baseline, that's the cost, and there's ways potentially to mitigate it.
Will you be making a profit then?
I would love if we could get rid of the write-offs, but I don't know. I don't. You know, it's a public service, and I.
No.
I was just gonna ask, is that your goal, to make a profit?
Well, I don't know. I think it's to provide the service. I mean, I don't think it
Break
ever.
even.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all we care about.
We
Break
don't
even.
like to, you know, it's like John Daigle likes to say with the transfer station. We're not in it for a profit. We're in it to
Pay the bills.
pay the bills, but it's mitigating expenses, and I think that's the best way to put it, is just try to keep the expenses as low as possible, because you're just never going to,
Right.
you know, I mean, Northeast obviously makes money, they're a corporation in it to make money, but they're getting out of the 911 business.
Yeah.
You know, they don't wanna answer 911 calls. That's-
But she said, I get hauled at for calling it making money on calls, but it's not. We're
It's the only thing, you get anything in to
right.
cover
If
the
you
rest.
don't-
And it's
If you
it's
don't,
hard,
yeah.
and I almost feel like, you know, and it's difficult because everybody says run it like a business, and we do to some extent, but in the end, we are a public service. It is a service to the public, and we have to provide the service, and it's daunting, and, you know.
As, you know, I looked at our budget, Waldoboro's portion of that was, what, close to 300,000 increase,
Yeah.
just for Waldoboro. So that was, like I said, her and I get into it, about an $800,000 increase in the budget.
Not in a bad way.
Not in a bad
Very
way,
respectful you are,
Yes.
but,
That's a huge jump.
Our next half, from your June to January for us is hard to cover, because we don't even know what that is yet,
right,
specific.
right. And part of that was because I didn't wanna go through and then have my budget committee come back and select board push back and say, well, that's not, because we talked about it, the second meeting I think we had was, you know, maybe we need to not just base it on one thing, maybe we need a
Yeah, we
combination.
gotta figure that out, yeah.
Because, but I think it gives us a good start in this,
Yep.
in this, because, you know, call volume for you guys went down significantly in your third year. So, you know, how do we do that? Is population fair, is call volume fair, is a combination of both?
You must have a figure on, say, the worst case scenario, you gotta send 2 paramedics, or however you wanna send them, from there down, right? You must have a category that you bill for,
Well,
So,
if there's no transport, we don't get paid.
well, exactly,
So
but
the problem-
no, there should be a fee.
so
There
the
should-
problem, so if you know, if you wanna do like a call, so for
That's kind of the service
the
part of
per
it.
call, yeah, we could do it, there's formulas that do it that
It's
way.
just something in my head to formulate, I don't know what it costs, so.
It's an interesting thing, and we get asked that a lot, and that was a question at Jefferson, and Nick actually handled that one, because he's like, every call's different, there's no average.
No, okay.
You know, and then you gotta look at, are you more of Medicare, so
Yeah.
we're not gonna get
Yeah,
that,
all of it,
it's gonna get hard, it's gonna come back to you. So, you know, you might bill $960, you wanna do it per call, but you're really only getting $300, or $350, $460, whatever that is. There's too many numbers in this brain now, but, you know, we're getting a third of it, who's responsible for that other 2/3?
Yep.
So, yeah, but I think that's fine, and like I said, you know, and
There's gotta be something so that, even as a town of Waldoboro, you could at least break even. Like on those calls, you know, it's
That's what
like,
I've been pushing for.
right, and that's,
it shouldn't be up to that guy that had a heart attack to pay for that one that didn't.
it's true, and we have to be, like I said, you know, in fire, there's not as many, I hate to say this, but we have a great mutual aid relationship with our fire departments, we really do. And I'm gonna say they're, you know, that's how those departments function, is with mutual aid. It's different for an ambulance, you know, if you're going into another town 44 times and they're coming into you once,
Yeah.
it's
That's not
just,
mutual aid.
that's not mutual aid, and that's why I made that's why I called it mutual aid, but, you know, we have to be more cognizant of that, and I think it's just how it evolved, and anytime you have something that starts out volunteer, it's very hard to change that systematic way of looking at it. It's hard, it's the hardest thing, and you're dealing with people's lives, so you never wanna
No.
close the door to that. Anybody have any other questions, fun things, happiness, complaints?
I'm all set. For now, anyway, shall I go through this now? I'll call you, but.
Well, yeah, you guys can just.
Cause as you did your presentation, I had questions all along, it's like, I'll never write them all down. so.
Well, but you can look through them, I mean,
Yeah,
you know.
thank you very much.
I tried to asterisk things that I thought were important, you know. And if you need like specifics, just call me, I can provide you with the backup.
Our finance look great. I guess we're all set.
Thanks for having us.
Somebody, I move we adjourn. Oh, you gonna update us on something?
If you would like a quick executive, I can update you on a personnel issue.
Okay.
Yeah, just have to make the motion.
We go into executive.
Call me,
Is there a
if you need me.
second?
Call me if you need me.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
One level. Well, of course, I got my other room in the basement.